Hello students, I am your Bhushan sir. Hope all of you are fine and safe at home. Take care of your health during this pandemic time. Today, we shall understand another phylum of non-chordata, namely phylum Nematoda. It is also called as phylum Aschelminthes or Nemathelminthes. So, the objectives of the present session is to describe the characteristics of nematodes and to understand the beneficial and parasitic nematodes. Contents includes the study of general characteristics of the phylum Nematoda with examples. The term nematoda is derived from two Greek terms, nema and eidos. Nema means thread, eidos means forms. So, nematoda refers to thread-like worms or roundworms. As they have cylindrical, elongated, small and segmented round body, they are called as roundworms. Due to the small size, they are also commonly called as pinworms. It was before the actual scientific study of these worms. A former belief was that these worms were looking like elongated sac-like structures which were internally filled with some fluid matter. Hence were named as sac-worms. The Greek term then used was Aschelminthes, where askos means sac, helminthes means worms. Students, there is still an ambiguity related to the name of this particular phylum, but as per the syllabus of yours, we need to mention it as nematodes. I hope it is clear now. Well, now we shall look into the general characteristics of phylum Nematoda. As we have understood in the earlier sessions that general characteristics refers to the common features which are related to this particular group of organisms of nematodes. To start with the first one, the habitat and habit. Students, remember, habit refers to the general appearance of an animal. Habitat refers to the dwelling place or living place of this particular organisms. When we look at these animals of nematodes, they are widely distributed. So, the distribution is very wide and they have an elongated body which is like worms, lives in places which are said to be free living, or it could be parasitic. It could be aquatic and it could be even terrestrial. So, we have all the modes of distribution of these organisms. The animal that lives in the aquatic condition is Trichonilla spiralis. We have Trichonilla varieties, but here Trichonilla spiralis is an aquatic form which lives in the water, infecting the animals that lives in the water. They are also terrestrial, mean to say they live on the land, inside the soil. So, we have soil nematodes. One major soil nematode that we have is Caenorhabditis, which is commonly called as Rhabditis organism or C. elegans organism. It is a non-infectious, non-pathogenic and non-parasitic nematode which commonly feeds on the microbes amidst the vegetation which gets rotten. If you look at the agricultural fields, after the harvest, the plants will be left like that, and the plants after the removal will be thrown in a place. In that place, it undergoes rotting or decomposing. Students, remember that is the place where the Caenorhabditis elegans or C. elegans lives, feeding on the microbes that causes the decomposition. Then we also have the organisms of parasitic and free living. Free living, the example is again Caenorhabditis elegans. You know why? Because it lives freely in the soil. It doesn't depend on the other organism for its survival. Whereas we do have the parasitic organisms of nematodes. So parasites are the animals which will depend on the host organisms for their survivability. So when we look at the platyhelminthes, there we have learnt that Fasciola hepatica or the liver fluke or Tinea solium, the tapeworm, they are all the organisms which come under the parasites. So here also we do have nematodes, including the group of organisms that depends on the host called as the parasites. We have many parasites in the human beings also. For example, Ascaris lumbricoides. This is commonly called as the roundworm, which is responsible for causing the obstructions in the intestine upon the infections. When they infect the body, they tend to cause the abnormalities related to the intestinal functions. They also affect the normal function of pancreas. So we call it as pancreatitis. So it causes the damage to the pancreas organ also. They do cause the infectious jaundice. So there are few symptoms related to the infection of Ascaris into the human body. So something like that, we do have parasites like Wuchereria bankrupti, which is commonly causes the lymphatic filariasis or elephantiasis. You might have seen the people with the bulged legs like that of the elephants. So this is caused by the filarial worm, a nematode. So like this, we have varieties or group of parasitic nematodes under the phylum. The next is shape. Coming on to the shape of these organisms, as we know, they have elongated body which is cylindrical, having tube-shaped body showing the anterior and the posterior ends. The body is unsegmented. It is not divided. It looks like a worm. And both the ends, even though it is tube-like, both ends are tapering. So it has tapering ends. It has cylindrical body which is unsegmented. It is elongated worm-like. The body is very soft. Coming on to the body organization aspects, it shows organ system grade of body organization. So in previous sessions we have understood body organization or grade of body organization refers to how the body of the animal will function with reference to the physiology. Here organs many together functions for one physiology. For example, there are many organs involved for a digestive system. Many organs are involved for a reproductive system. Many organs are involved for the excretory system. Likewise, many organs, when they together function for a particular physiology, the grade of body organization, we call it as organ system grade of body organization. For example, in the diagram here, the digestive system contains the mouth, then it shows the pharynx, intestine, then it shows the anus. So when you look at the major parts of the digestive system, many organs are together functioning for the physiology of digestion. Hence it is called organ system grade of body organization. Similarly, the other physiological systems will have many organs contributing for the function respectively. The next one is body cover. So the body of the organisms, even though it is cylindrical, elongated, worm-like, having the tapered ends both the sides as what we see in the diagram here, it has got a covering over the body, skin or epidermis. It is called as generally non-cellular collagenous cuticle. So this cuticle concept we have learned in the previous class, previous session itself under the platyhelminthes. Students, remember, cuticle is an additional layer secreted by the epidermis below. So this particular epidermis will secrete above a layer of the non-collagenous or non-cellular or dead matter of cells, which we call it as the cuticle. And because of this cuticle, which is multi-layered, it brings about the flexibility for the worms. You know, the worm, as it wants to show the locomotion, they require the flexibility for the body. So that flexibility is brought about by this non-collagenous dead tissue of cuticle also. So they not only gives the protection for the body, so also provides the flexibility for the body during the movement or locomotion. The next important feature is that these organisms have got the cuticle, which is provided with the special kind of receptive hairs or sensory hairs, which we call it as cuticle setae. So generally, setae refers to the additional hair-like outgrowths of the body. Here, the additional hair growth that are seen on the body is present exactly on the cuticle, hence we call them as cuticular setae. So this cuticular setae are specially meant for the process of sensitivity. I mean to say, the sensation process is brought about by the setae component present on the body. So it can also have sometimes the spinous process. If the setae is movable, if it is flexible, it is generally called as the setal group. When it becomes firm, when it becomes immovable, then that condition we call it as spines. Okay, so we do have certain of the organisms of the nematode showing the movable hairs called the setae and immovable structures called as the spines. Also shows the cuticular wrinkles, which we call it as annulation. Students, when we look at the body of these worms, it appears as if it has got number of segments, but it is not so. Internally doesn't have any segmentation. Instead, the segmentation appearance is due to the presence of the wrinkled cuticle that is present. So because of that wrinkled cuticle, the organism could have the flexibility while showing the locomotion. So that's about the body cover called as the cuticle. Then the next important concept is related to the epidermis. So when we remove the cuticle part of the organism, the next immediate part that we find below the cuticle is called the cellular or syncytial epidermis. Students, remember the same concept we have learned with reference to platyhelminthes also. Here, syn refers to SYN, syn refers to fusion, cytos refers to cells. So the cells of the epidermis appears to be as if they are all fused. So it shows the multinucleated appearance for the cellular layer. So that's the importance of the syncytial epidermis, which is a major characteristic feature of all the nematodes. So the epidermis of all the nematodes is said to be syncytial condition. It is also called as cenocytic or multinucleated. You can see the same in the diagram down in the slide. Coming on to the body symmetry. As we know, symmetry refers to division of the body at either the central vertical axis or central horizontal axis, so that the mirror images of the body parts or fragments are seen. Here, the symmetry is called as bilateral symmetry because the axis of division is vertical, like what you find for the Platyhelminthes. Students, remember, right from the phylum Platyhelminthes onwards, we find the organisms till the chordate showing the symmetry generally referred as bilateral symmetry. Bi means two, lateral means sides, symmetry means division. So, the division after the vertical plane, it shows two mirror images of right and left which are similar, and hence is called the symmetry as bilateral symmetry. So, the division or plane of division is also referred as the sagittal plane. So, here are three important organisms, anterior body part of nematodes, which can be divided exactly from anterior posterior axis at center to get the mirror images. So, that is the importance of the nematodes. Then coming on to the next important concept called as the this nematodes are called as triploblastic organisms. So, this triploblasticity is referring to the parts or the germ layers from which the body of the organism is formed. So, here in case of nematodes, the three germ layers during the embryonic stages involves in the formation of the body overall. So, such body is of the organism is also referred as triploblastic condition, okay, a triploblastic body. So, here the tri means 3 or triplo means 3, blasto refers to germ layers. 3 germ layers involves in the formation of the body of nematodes, hence it is called as triploblastic condition. Here you can see the first outer layer is called, the blue color layer we call it as the ectoderm, the pink color layer in the middle called mesoderm, and yellow color layer inside is called endoderm. So, the overall body of the organism is formed from these 3 germ layers. So, towards the most right extremity you find a diagram of the roundworm showing the cross section indicating the 3 germ layer involves in the formation of the body of the organism. The next is the body of the organism below the epidermis. It shows presence of muscles. Students, remember, there are 4 bands or groups of muscles seen, and all muscles belongs to one particular type called as longitudinal muscles. Longitudinal, the term includes the term long, L-O-N-G, long, which refers to placing the muscle bands or muscle fibers in a vertical position in an elongated manner. So, the cross section of the same of the body of the organism shows 4 bands. Towards the left side, towards the right side, you find the body of the organism showing those longitudinal muscles alone. So, the body of nematodes is made up of only longitudinal muscles. There are no other special muscles involved. Then, next important feature of this longitudinal muscle is that they are responsible for the contraction and relaxation of the body parts, so that the organism can have the flexibility during the movement. So, the movement of the body is also dependent on the activity of longitudinal muscles. So, that is contraction and relaxation of muscles. So, that is the importance of the musculature of the body of organisms. Excuse me. The next important feature is related to the body coelom. Students, remember, in Platyhelminthes, between the body wall and the alimentary canal or the body organs, there was no space at all seen. But in this group of organisms, a space is seen between the body wall and the inner alimentary canal. But that space is said to be perivisceral coelom because it is not separated by means of the lining of mesoderm. Generally, in the previous sessions that we have learnt related to the coelom concept is that Coelom is the cavity or the space present between or formed between outer body wall and the inner alimentary canal. If this space need to be separated, there should be a lining of mesoderm. Okay, there should be splitting of mesoderm. So if mesoderm lining is seen for the cavity, we call it as a true coelom. But here in case of the nematodes, the lining is absent. And also it is referred as the perivisceral coelom. And this is the space where you find the fluid matter gets filled. So the space is not kept as an empty space. Instead, it will be filled with some fluid matter, sometimes even some cells of a parenchyma. And in between this fluid matter or parenchymatous cells, you find some of the organs placed. So you have the cavity. Cavity is not lined by the mesoderm, and the cavity will be filled with the fluid or parenchymatous tissue, and in between this cavity we also find the presence of certain of the organs. So when organs are present within the coelom, we call it as perivisceral coelom. And this kind of coelom, which is not a true cavity filled with the fluid matter or parenchymatous tissue, we call it a pseudocoelom. A very special character related to nematodes. Pseudo refers to false. Coelom is the body cavity. The body cavity is called as a false body cavity, and it is developed from the blastocele of the organism. Remember, because of the development of the body cavity called the coelom from the blastocele, which is not a true cavity but filled with the fluid or parenchymatous tissue, we call it as pseudocoelom. Remember students, the organisms of nematodes will have pseudocoelom in it. A special character related to nematodes. Of all the animal phyla, we find only the nematode showing this character of pseudocoelom. The next important feature is related to the cephalization. As we know, cephalus refers to head. Formation of head is called as cephalization. Here in this nematodes, we don't find a specific part of head as a structure which is visible to us. So it is invisible, head-like structure is present in these organisms. Hence, we can say distinct head is lacking, it is absent. But internally, they will have the parts related to the cephalization. You remember, I told in the last session, cephalization should have formation of brain structure within and outside the sensory organs related. We do have these organisms of nematodes showing the character, having the brain development inside and outside the sensory organs. Remember students, the sensory organs and their position plays a vital role, means an important role in the process of classification of the nematodes. So to divide or to classify nematodes, this characteristic feature of sensory organs and their position matters. In case of nematodes, we have two groups of nematodes. Okay, we have two classes of nematodes. Some group of nematodes will have presence of the sensory structures in their anterior end, okay, where the brain is present. Whereas in some other group of nematodes, we find the sensory structures which are visible to us towards the posterior end. So we have sensory organs, some showing at the anterior end, some showing at posterior end. If they show towards anterior end, we call them as the amphids. You remember, easy to remember, the concept is A for A, amphids for anterior. So the term amphi means double. These organisms will show anterior olfactory and sensory organs in the organisms. So if they are present towards anterior side, we call them as amphids. Similarly, towards posterior side also sometimes these sensory organs are seen. They are called as phasmids. So, we have amphids and phasmids. Amphids are seen towards anterior end, phasmids are seen towards posterior end. So, when I say cephalization, it refers to much of amphid group of organisms of nematodes, because at anterior end head is seen, which is not distinct outside, but internally shows the brain and the sensory organs related. So, down is a diagram showing the amphid structure in the nematode of a phasmid. A means absent, phasmida means the posterior structure, or also referred as amphid structure. Coming on to the next important system called digestive system. Students, remember, digestive system here is called as complete. It has got distinct mouth and anus at two ends of anterior and posterior sides. The digestive system of the organism is tubular, it is tube-like. When we look at the organism outside, it is also appears to be the cylindrical or tube-like. Excuse me. So, when you take a section of the organism, you can find the outer body of the organism showing a tube within, which is nothing but the digestive tract. So, the alimentary canal within the body of the animal appears to be a tube within another tube. Are you able to follow? So, tube within another tube arrangement is what exactly you find for the digestive system here in case of nematodes. And it shows sensory structures in their mouth, which are referred as the lips. In few cases, the number may range between 2 to 6. The next important part of behind the mouth is the pharynx. The pharynx here in case of the digestive system of nematode is very special, because it is made up of a very huge number of muscles. So, muscular pharynx is another characteristic feature related to nematodes, indicating the higher activity of the pharynx. So, behind the mouth is the pharynx, behind the pharynx lies the gut or the intestine. Students, remember, the intestine or the gut of the organism shows non-ciliated epithelial lining inside. Generally, excuse me, the ciliated lining of the epithelium inside the gut helps in two important functions. One is the movement of the food, of digestion. The second is also helps in absorption. So, here the gut is non-ciliated. As we know, most of these organisms directly feed on the digested food. There is no requirement of the ciliated epithelium much. Okay, and the digestion is both of intracellular and extracellular. Extracellular digestion is seen well in these organisms, that is within the tubular alimentary canal. We have understood that free living forms like Caenorhabditis elegans, it feeds on the microbes, especially bacteria present in that decomposing plant vegetation. If it is a parasite, it will directly take in the food, the digested food of the host itself. Coming on to the circulatory and respiratory systems. Both are absent in them, system as such it does not have, but respiration occurs through the body surface by the help of diffusion. It is commonly seen well in free living forms of organisms by aerobic respiration, where oxygen is involved, and absence of air, oxygen in the air can also be seen in anaerobic forms where parasitic organisms are involved. The next important feature is excretory system. So, we have understood that excretory system refers to the system which is involved in the removal of the excretory waste. mainly the water, carbon dioxide. These organisms also have special kind of excretory structures as how we have kidneys in us. Similar way, they have a special kind of cells called as rentate cells, a very special feature of nematodes again. Students, remember, rentate cells are special kind of cells present in the excretory system of the nematodes. Towards the right side of the slide, you have a representation of the rentate cell. It will have a head-shaped canal showing the rentate cell attached. Okay, the excretory system of nematode shows the rentate cells attached to the head-shaped canal of excretion. We call it as excretory canal, and this excretory canal will open outside through the excretory pore. So that's the importance of excretory system in case of the organism. Remember, what do you call the special kind of cells present in the excretory system of nematodes? Rentate cells. Now, coming on to the next system called nervous system. The sensitivity activity or sensor activity of the body is controlled by the common coordinating system called as the nervous system. Here, the nervous system has got a ring-shaped circumferential ring made up of many number of neurons. Students, remember, during the course of evolution, the shape of the brain is getting modified. In case of platyhelminthes, it was inverted V-shaped, from which two longitudinal nerve cords were arising, one towards right, the other one towards left, towards ventral side of the body. Here, the organisms of nematodes will have circumferential, a round shaped a ring like brain is present. It is called circumferential ring, nothing but the brain structure. Circum refers to round, pharyngeal refers to the pharynx, ring refers to again a circular structure. So, ring of nerve that surrounds the pharynx is called circumferential ring, from which arises the longitudinal nerve cords ventrally. So, you have generally the dorsal nerve cord and a ventral nerve cord. Two nerve cords arises from the circumferential ring that moves towards the posterior side. Down in the diagram you can see the pharynx is surrounded by that red colored structure called circumferential ring that shows two elongated longitudinal nerve nerve cords that moves towards the posterior side. Remember, the dorsal and ventral nerve cords are connected by means of the transverse commissures, okay, which will coordinate with the body activities or the functions. Coming on to the sensory organs. We know that nervous system is present, but there are also the organs which are related to the sensory activities. These organs are not that well developed in case of the nematodes because they are restricted to only one particular place. As we have discussed earlier, if some particular sensory organs are seen towards the anterior end, which we call it as amphids, some at posterior end, which we call it as phasmids. So, the diagram down towards left side shows amphids indicating the presence of the sensory organs towards anterior end. Towards posterior end you find in case of phasmids down towards the left side. Students, remember, both have got sensory activities. Amphids have got the sensory activity of olfaction. Olfaction refers to smell. Okay, so they are the sensory organs for having the smell of the food. Whereas the phasmids are chemosensory in function. They are sensory for the chemicals. So, organisms of amphids need to be present in case of free living organisms because they need to sensitize the food availability. Whereas the phasmids need to be present at the posterior end to have the sensitivity of chemicals, and that is commonly seen in case of the parasites because they live in another organism of the host called the host, and there the host organism produces varieties of chemicals, and that chemical environment the organism need to live and survive. So phasmids are helpful there in providing the chemosensory activities, whereas amphids are related to the mouth, which are responsible for the olfactory functions. So in simple terms, to remember this concept easily, amphids are related to the mouth, phasmids are related to the tail, that is anus. Coming into the next important concept, that is reproduction. Excuse me. For the first time in the animal kingdom, in nematodes we find the separation between male and female organisms. When we look at the organisms externally, you can easily define them or differentiate them into male and female category. So this condition we call it as sexual dimorphism. So sexes are separate, males are separate from that of females. Okay. So in case of Platyhelminthes, we have understood that the organisms are hermaphrodites, bisexual organisms, but here they are monosexual organisms. Males are separate from that of the females. They show gonochoristic condition. Gono refers to the organs, choristic here refers to differentiation. Males will have the testes, females will have the ovaries in them. So there is demarcation. However, are the males and females to appear to be? Males generally are said to be smaller with a curved posterior end. It will have a hook-like end. Down in the diagram here, you can find the first picture is of the male ascaris, where the posterior end is curved like a hook, the tail, which we call it as cecum. Here, the females are said to have a longer body. Okay, they have a long body and their posterior end is blunt or striped. Males shows a special structure at posterior end called as cloaca. A new term again that we need to understand here. Cloaca refers to the common opening through which the organism will throw the undigested waste, that is the anus will open there. Also, the organism will show the presence of the reproductive organ or the systems will open into the same space. So, a common way through which the undigested food or the waste comes out, and through the same space or the opening, even the reproductive cells also comes out, the gametic cells also comes out. So when we find a common place through an opening through which the digestive waste as well as the reproductive cells comes out, we call it as cloaca. Students, remember, males will show presence of cloaca. Okay, so cloaca is present in case of males. In case of females, cloaca is absent. So anus is seen separately and the reproductive system opens outside through the opening called as gonopore. So if you keenly observe in the diagram, the picture down towards the left side, the second picture refers to, second organism refers to the female, showing gonopore almost at the mid body towards the ventral side, whereas the anus is seen towards the posterior end. So there is separation of the opening of digestive system and reproductive system, namely the anus and gonopore seen for the organisms of females, whereas in case of males both remain same, which we call it as cloaca. Now the males will produce the special kind of sperm cells or the sex cells which are of amoeboid shape. So amoeboid sperm cells are special features related to the males here. Coming on to the fertilization, It is called internal fertilization, where male gametes enter into the body of the females, and there within the body of the female, the male gametes and female gametes undergo fusion. So, when the fusion of male and female gametes occurs within the body of the organism, we call it as internal fertilization. It may be self-fertilization or cross-fertilization. When can we call the fertilization as self? No doubt male and female gametes are fusing within the same organism. Okay. And we are saying it is cross-fertilization. Here, the term self and cross-fertilization is related to the organisms of Caenorhabditis elegans. Okay, there in that case of the animal, we have the organisms of hermaphroditic conditions existing. I mean to say, male and female reproductive organs are present, or gonads are present in the same animal. So, that category of organisms of Caenorhabditis are also available. In that organism, cross or self-fertilization is seen. What do you mean by self-fertilization? Male gametes, female gametes of the same animal will fuse in the body of the organism. In cross-fertilization, sperms of the different organisms are taken inside for the fertilization process. So, fertilization of self and cross is related to the organisms of hermaphrodites, whereas the other organisms, rest of nematodes shows general internal fertilization. Now, development is said to be direct in few cases, indirect in few other cases. Indirect development is commonly seen with the help of the host organisms. So, parasites will show most of the time the indirect development. Down in the picture, you can find different diagrams showing the development of ascaris, okay, the common roundworm. Now, after we understanding the general characteristic features of Platyhelminthes, students remember very special characters related to, nematodes is that, number one, they are pseudocoelomates. Okay. Number two, they have syncytial epidermis with a cuticle outside. Number three, they do have muscular pharynx. Number four, they have nerve ring which is surrounding the pharynx called as the circumpharyngeal nerve ring, from which arises dorsal and ventral nerve cords. Number five, sexes are separate and shows sexual dimorphism. Okay. Di means two, morpho means external. Externally, males and females can be separable. Okay. So, these few characters we need to remember may as a different or special characters related to nematodes. You do not have in your syllabus classification of phylum Platyhelminthes, but for our understanding we shall understand it because we need to know the examples. Okay, examples. As I told you earlier, the classification of nematodes is based on the sensory structures which are positioned on the body. If the sensory structures are seen towards the anterior side, we call them as the amphids. So, those group of amphids comes under Adenophoria or Ephasmidia group. So, the class 1 group of organisms includes amphid sensory organs. For example, here is the Trichinella. Students remember Trichinella is a parasite which is seen in rodents, pigs and even in human beings, which causes a disease called as trichinosis. It is a condition where the heart of the organisms and then will be affected, and then it causes the breathing problems in the organisms and leads to death upon infection. So, that is the importance of this group. So, class 1 group of Platyhelminthes includes the organisms, and the class is called Ephasmidia or Adenophoria. Adeno means gland, phoro refers to bear. A means absent, phasmos refers to without the phasmids. aphasmedia. So sensory organs towards posterior side are absent. It otherwise means amphids are present. So animals with the amphid sensory organs, which are responsible for the olfactosensory activity in nematodes, come under this category of aphasmedia. The second class is called phasmedia or caesarenantia. So this particular group or phasmedia includes the animals that shows phasmids. Phasmids, as we know, they are the sensory structures present towards the posterior end, indicating the chemoreception function. It includes the organisms of Ancyclostoma, which is commonly called as hookworm, seen in the host animals like the intestine of man, then dogs, cats, etc., causing the problems related to the intestine like diarrhea, malnutrition, etc. Then hookworm we call it as Ancyclostoma. Then Wuchereria, as we have understood, this is the organism which causes lymphatic filariasis. Then Ascaris, which causes the infection of intestine. Then Caenorhabditis elegans or rhabditis organism, which is a soil nematode, a free living soil nematode that is seen amidst the decomposing vegetation. So they all have the structures called as phasmids. Now you may have a doubt, students. Caenorhabditis elegans, it's a free living organism. So it should have phasmids in it as well as amphids in it, right? Then it should be a common organism that should fall under aphasmedia and phasmedia, isn't it? But here phasmid structure, presence and absence is the criterion for this classification. If it is present, we will have to include them under phasmedia group. If it is absent only, then we will be including that in the aphasmedia. Okay, so remember that concept. So down is a diagram related to Ascaris. The curved or hook-like structure you can find for the males, which is small in size compared to the female, which is longer, larger, and with a blunt end, straight end. So with this, we are completing the general characteristic features as well as the classification with examples related to Nemathelminthes or Nematoda. Now we shall test how much exactly we have learned the concept by looking at few of the MCQs and answering them. One of the following characteristic is not correct of Nematoda, which is not related to Nematoda. Elongated cylindrical body, it is related. Fixed number of cells, remember students, the body of the nematodes have the condition of fixed number of cells with reference to the systems. For example, the digestive system, when we look at it, will have the fixed number of cells of particular organ. That is also another characteristic feature of them. Then they are pseudocoelomates. They have pseudocoelom. Then they are hermaphrodites. Do we have all nematodes showing hermaphroditism? No, except for Caenorhabditis elegans. Rest of all the organisms comes under monoecious group. So answer is C, hermaphroditism. It is not related to nematodes. Next, name the animal group with pseudocoelom in it. Name the phylum with pseudocoelom. So we have learned nematodes. Answer is again C. The process of morphological differentiating of males and female sexes. Sex is the term which refers to scientifically differentiate. So we can differentiate male and female organisms. At this phenomenon, if it's taking place by looking at the external features, externally by looking at the features or visible characters, if we could differentiate them into males and females, we call it as sexual dimorphism. So answer is A, sexual dimorphism. The musculature of Ascaris consists of, so what type of muscles are present in the organisms? It is only longitudinal muscle. So answer is D. Next, Ascaris has dash type of cells in their excretory system. What do you call the excretory cells of the Ascaris or nematodes? Renate cells. So, answer is C. Beneath the cuticle, in case of Ascaris, Ascaris is an example of nematode. Found the hypodermis, which is called as hypo means below. So, below the cuticle, what layer do you find? You call it as syncytial epidermis. Answer is B. Well, students, what have we learnt in today's class? We have understood the characteristics of nematodes, and we also have learned what are the organisms of parasitic and non-parasitic or helpful nematodes present in the phylum, the characters related to it. Students, you can refer the following websites of Wikipedia and Britannica.com, and books related to this particular concept is Invertebrate Zoology by P.S. Verma and Agarwal also, then Modern Textbook of Zoology by Kotpal. Thank you all students, hope you have understood the concept. Your queries and comments, you can write it to my personal WhatsApp number, and take care of yourselves during this pandemic time. Take care of your health also. Thank you all. Thank you all.